Deep commitment is one of the highest expressions of freedom. We often think when we commit, we restrict. We're boxed in and we're restricted, but what if we're not? What if the discipline, meaning the structures that we create for ourselves, whether it's being committed to a personal practice of opening self up, it could be a breath practice or a meditation practice, we need discipline to take the action at some level. What if that lent itself to deeper freedom?
Stefanos Sifandos
isn't just guiding personal growth, he's redefining it.
With over 15 years as an educator and behavioral scientist, Stefanos is recognized globally for his expertise in relationships and modern masculinity.
Drawing on his background in psychology, philosophy, and ecology,
he has helped everyone from elite soldiers and Olympic champions to CEOs and individuals heal trauma and build authentic connections.
Where is commitment versus feeling things out? Where is that line of determining when you give 100% to something? Stefanos, welcome to the Creative Path Podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Good, yeah, good to see you. And we were already rolling into so much right there that I think is important and we will get to. But first, for people who are not familiar with your work, give us the quick download so people have context.
Yeah, thank you. Been in the personal transformation space, personal development space for 24 years, in mental wellness, emotional, spiritual, physical wellness. Backgrounds in psychology, behavioral science, trauma, somatics, and if I was to put a sort of title or label on myself, relational and spiritual teacher. Have been really blessed to work with amazing human beings from all walks of life, especially from extreme circumstances, special operations guys, gold medalists, Olympians, world champion fighters, just people that really push their body and their minds to extremes. And then just learned a lot from that and gained really deep perspective in my own life from that and from my own experiences. In fact, I'd probably say really the greatest learning has been from actually paying attention to myself and what has transpired in my life, and then learning from that, growing from that, and really addressing a lot of that as well, as much as I possibly can at any given moment. In the world, I'm a coach. I work with clients in a one-on-one capacity. I work with couples a great deal as well. And my wife and I work together, Christine, programs, virtual in-person retreats. Last week we ran 2 retreats and I was part of ran 3 retreats. 2 retreats, my own event, and then part of another event as well. So we do a lot of that too, and that's fun. And just really supporting people in, helping them find more of themselves in the world.
And have you worked with high-level artists and creatives? Yeah,
some of my clients. Yeah. It's not like a specific niche or anything, but yes, I can think of many clients. Yeah.
So tell me what you notice that it's the same, because this is the Creative Path podcast. When you are seeing professional athletes, world-class fighters, special ops, people at the top of their game in certain fields, is it the same mentality for high-level artists, or is there a difference?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I got to pause and think about that for a moment. Yes, and right, because I think when I'm referencing internally some of maybe I should start with how I not define creativity in this sort of masculine construct, but just my connection to creativity.
You want to mansplain some creativity?
Yeah. Just my connection to creativity is, I believe creativity, moves in every industry and every space. It's not just the arts per se. I think that elite athlete is being creative in their movement, in the way they function through the world, in the way they pay attention to their training regimen and their nutrition and their sleep and all the moving parts. To me, if I really nail it, it's the connections that we make internally that then transpire in our external world that create something that produce like a finished product or something like that, right? Whether it's a piece of art or whether it's a 100-meter sprint, right? Or it's a mission or whether it's 3 rounds in the ring, whatever it may be, right? So I think it's connecting those dots in really, I guess, creative, innovative ways. It's seeing what is often unseen. And so if I think about your question, the parallels there is that creative people that allow themselves to tap into the intuitive creativity have this tremendous capacity to see something that the majority of people just can't or won't or don't want to see.
Okay.
And they do something with that then in their own way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how have you seen them nurture that in the most effective ways? What has been most effective?
Yeah, discipline's part of that. So a commitment to the craft, whatever that looks like. Spaciousness. So I think most of us have probably heard of, I think it was Isaac Newton when he sitting under a tree and the apple fell and he figured out gravity and all of that. Right. Well, part of the story behind that is that he was resting. He was just creating space from his endeavors of looking into religiously science and whatever else he was studying at the time. And so spaciousness, discipline, relentlessness, persistence, patience with self and patience with the process. These are characteristics that I have seen in myself as well. When I play these out, my ability to be more creative expands. My ability to think and feel more organically. There's less pressure. There's less, and pressure's okay, by the way. That's also another characteristic. I think when we put ourselves under some pressure, but healthy pressure, not excessive pressure. But when the pressure is excessive, I can't think straight. I'm exerting too much energy in trying to be in the moment and force it. That's another thing I see with creatives as well, is when they're able to get into flow state through discipline, through creating spaciousness, through self-compassion and self-love as well, right? They're able to get into this flow state where effortless and ease and grace comes to them. One other thing I'd say, which I want to be careful saying this one, well, because I don't know how accurate it is for everyone. Okay. But let me just talk it through, because I think you may have a perspective on this as well.
Yeah, this is a combo. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's do it. So one of those, I think, so you've got high performers, or you've got highly creative people, highly intuitive people. And then, in every discipline or in any walk of life, there's then the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah.
My sense is the 1% of the 1% are more deeply connected to themselves, and they've done a base level at the very least of, we'll call it healing or wholeness, where they understand their patterns and their patterns that may not serve them in relationship or in life or in intimacy or even in their creative endeavors, where they've healed some old trauma, or at the very least they have an understanding and a relationship to that trauma that doesn't bind them to it. Again, that creates spaciousness and freedom in the body, because now there's less energy expenditure on surviving and more energy expenditure on thriving.
You want my opinion on that?
Yeah, well, of course. Why wouldn't I?
So first, classifying the 1% of the 1%. What we're basing that off of kind of results. So
yeah, maybe.
Like saying, like, this is the best based off of results. So would that mean the gold medalists that we're talking about?
No,
or would it mean the Academy Award winners? So like understanding what you mean by that next echelon of people is an important thing for me to understand. For sure. I think that's part of it. That's got to be part of it. I'm also very clear that sometimes our wounds drive not only our creativity, but also drive our performance and drive the 1% of the 1%. And there's unresolved wounds as well. Well, it's interesting. So I was just having this conversation about Kobe Bryant, right? Because Kobe's first half of his career, he was disliked. He was, when he wore number 8, right? He was disliked. People thought he was arrogant, a very polarizing figure. And then he had the rape case in Colorado. I don't know if you follow basketball at all.
I do, but I don't remember that though.
So he went on trial for rape. Yeah. And
he didn't get convicted though.
He did not get convicted. Yeah. It's a whole thing. I don't need to go into that, but he was married. It was a whole thing, right?
I do remember.
And that dark night of the soul publicly shifted him. And if you look at the next half of his career, he changed his number to signify that. And he became now what is legendary. I mean, he is, the way he's spoken about, you almost wouldn't know that the first half of his career, people hated him. And people tell all these stories about how he mentored them and the wisdom that he brought. And if you look at the interviews that have now surfaced of him kind of post retirement, it's insane. And so that's interesting to me because it speaks to your point. There was a shift for him where he started, I think, to do that work and speaks about that. But there was an initial infamous Steve Jobs, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant thing where they were so single-minded in a way that was detrimental to a lot of other relationships in their life.
Yeah.
But they just funneled that in. And I think that, to me, that's sort of the answer that I see to the question that you're posing, is if it's really about bringing as much of yourself to something as you possibly can. And I think that when we work through those traumas, whatever, we get more access to ourselves. And so we have the ability to actually do it at a higher level. But even if we don't have that access, if we just figure out how to bring all of ourselves to something, I think that's something that most humans don't actually figure out how to do.
Agreed. And I also will clarify that quote unquote healing our trauma doesn't mean necessarily being done with it. It may actually mean still being in a tussle with that shadow aspect of self, or being in a tussle with that pain and that difficulty. But it's having, and it's not even about control over it, it's having a very different relationship to it. So it still may exist within you. Mm-hmm. It still may even drive you, but the way it drives you is totally different. It's less unconscious and more conscious. You're more whole as a person, you're more integrated. My perspective is that the more whole we are per se, and the more integrated we are, the greater access we have to the unknown that resides within us. We don't know what that is until we go to those places.
Mm-hmm. And so what is something right now that you see most commonly in the high performers, especially that you work with, that is the piece that's not yet integrated?
There's a great deal of focus on mind and mindset and the whole industry of mindset, mm-hmm. right? Which is, I'm all for, there's nothing wrong with that. We're multifaceted beings. It's a part of our humanity, of our human potential and our human development, right? But that, what I see is that the hyper focus on that pulls us away from quote unquote being in our hearts. And again, that's the sort of the deeper emotional work. It's integrating the emotional aspect of self into our humanity, into our creative expression, into our endeavors, into the things that matter most to us, into our intimate relationships, which I think one could argue as well is a form of creativity and expression in and of itself, right? Like creativity, innovation, ingenuity in relationship, in navigating the complexity of drama or conflict or differing opinions, or my old historic trauma coming and rising to the surface, mixing with yours, and what do we do with that, and how can we get creative? Yes, pending on what do we both want the outcome to be. I get that. Mm-hmm. Right, like it's, if you want the outcome to be a conflict and I want it to be resolution, then it's gonna be challenging right. to be in that space. But I think what's missing is that connection, that deeper connection to heart. And one of the reasons that could possibly be, and this isn't for everyone, of course, but one of the reasons that could possibly be is because what I also notice in high performers particularly, and in people that can be highly creative, is that there's caveats to this, but there's generally no space for that, because they almost feel, or they have this intuitive knowing, even though it's not necessarily true, that it will never end. The despair and the anguish, the grief, the anger, whatever it is that they're going to touch will never end. Therefore, I can't touch it. Therefore, let me go to my creativity, or let me go to my being a high performer. And this is what I said earlier around, I'm totally aware that our wounds sometimes drive our ability to be great at something as well, right? And my argument is that, or my position on that is that you're still missing out on something integral within yourself by not touching that part of you.
What value have you derived from touching that part?
Ooh. I really think I am where I am today in terms of my external successes, but also my internal revelations and successes as well, because I've been willing to traverse that path of just, we'll call it shadow exploration, or looking at the parts of myself that are uncomfortable to look at, the parts that I may dislike, whether it's a reactive pattern or an aggressive pattern that genuinely live within me, whether it's, unresolved and unprocessed abuse from my childhood, that formed patterns of adult intimate relating that don't really serve me in terms of expansion and growth. Really sitting with those as opposed to ignoring them has changed the way I feel about myself. I can sleep easier at night, like genuinely sleep easier.
Yeah,
at night.
you were just talking about how you are and your wife is not.
I go straight to sleep. My baby wakes up, I do what I need, boom, out, back to sleep. If I have worries even, I made a decision probably about 20 something years ago I will never lose sleep again over anyone or anything. Now, I mean, it still may happen, but so far, so good-ish for the most part.
and so I hear that in some ways I go, wow, there's a part of you that must be able to just compartmentalize it. Or have you developed a process that is not compartmentalizing, that you just process it that quickly?
No, both. So it's a deliberate compartmentalization where I say, okay, I'm going to come back to this.
Got it.
So I may be committed to sleep and rest in that moment, but I'm going to come back to this, and I do come back to it. And when I don't, guess what happens? My life blows up.
Right. So how someone who wants to do that, how would you advise they develop that ability? Because for most people, the idea of saying, okay, I'm going to think about you tomorrow after I wake up, but we're going to go to bed now. Doesn't matter. Voice still chattering. How have you managed to be able to create that?
There's no 2-step answer, which I'm sure everyone wants, or a 7-step sequence, or there's no short answer.
4 S's.
yeah. Unfortunately not. Discipline is part of that in terms of really having a practice of commitment to your practice, right? To your, let me revisit this. Having support in your life is really important. Working with someone, whether it's a coach or a therapist or you're part of a group, but accountability is really important. But then what's required with accountability is also, a deep desire to face your ego, to face yourself, to face the shame that sometimes may live within you as well. The mental chatter piece is it's not like it doesn't exist within my. Of course, I have a lot of it. I will sometimes, if I'm about to have a difficult conversation with someone, I will play out the conversation over and over and over again. And sometimes I just let myself do it. Sometimes I don't want to do it, but it just happens. But over time, if you commit yourself to a practice, you develop an aptitude of, yes, compartmentalization, but also processing at a faster rate. And so for me, I get into my body. And if something's really alive for me, it's not about blocking it if I don't need to. Like before I go to bed, let's just say I'm feeling some anxiousness before I go to sleep. I don't necessarily compartmentalize it. In that moment, I may engage in a somatic process where I pause, I slow down, I feel what the feeling is. I may label it and name it just to give it some context, right? And that gives it access as well. It becomes tangible from that place. I may even go into a visualization of bringing structure to it. Where is it in my body? What form and shape is it taking? What texture is it? Really make it accessible. Because when we create objects in our world, whether it's a thought, an emotion, or the camera stand here, whatever it may be, it becomes more real. And in becoming more real, we have a deeper relationship to it, but just sort of by default, right? Mm-hmm. And so from that place, then I will sit with that, and then I'll ask it, how I use the word animation. Like, how does this want to animate? How does this want to move through me? How does it want to express? What does it want to do right now? Mm-hmm. So in that moment, I will honor that, and I'll just trust intuitively. And it's practice. So you may think, if you're doubting yourself, you may think, how do I know this is what I actually want? You just do it.
Well, what you're describing is very much a creative act.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's for imagination.
Sure. Big time.
It's creativity.
Big time.
It's freedom of expression.
For sure. And it's allowance as well, and permission, right? I think permission is a big part of creativity too, because if we're hindered with too many rules and regulations and stipulations, we don't give ourselves permission to just freely express.
So that's really interesting, because the word that you had used most dominantly that I heard in your descriptions was discipline.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about permission to be free, right? And this is a conflict that I see a lot with
It's actually
artists,
not a conflict
right?
to me though.
Perfect. So please speak to the discipline and the freedom for permission.
100%. And I'll just finish off this I guess 3-step process, because now there is one in case everyone wants to know. So once I've animated it and I've moved it, maybe I'm angry and I want to scream, whatever. I do it until it feels complete. I'll sit down and lay down, pause, be silent, feel, observe. Do I need to do more? Do I need to repeat step 2? If not, some slow breathing, maybe some shaking. Just get that intensity. If it was intense, get it out of the body a little more, and then go about my business.
So objectify it, animate it, move it.
Animation and moving is the same. Objectify it, or name it, animate it, observe, and repeat step 2 if you need to, and just keep doing that.
Name it, animate it, observe it now.
Yeah.
There you go. Now
I like it.
Now $9.99.
Let's do it.
Get into the funnel. And so
discipline
thank
and
you.
freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Discipline and freedom. So in this context, for my life, it's nice to have the discipline of saying I have structures in my life, which you could call the masculine container, that maybe I'll answer it this way. Deep commitment is one of the highest expressions of freedom. Let that land for a little bit. That's it. I'll expand on it, of course, but maybe that's a way to answer it or a way to begin.
Mm-hmm.
So in commitment, there's a ton of freedom. We often think when we commit, we restrict, whether it's in a relationship or a mortgage or whatever it may be, right? Like whatever commitment we make, we're boxed in and we're restricted. But what if we're not? So what if the discipline, meaning the structures that we create for ourselves, whether it's our calendar during the day or during the week, right? Whether it's being committed to a personal practice of opening self up. It could be a breath practice or a meditation practice, or it could be exercise regime or being in nature, whatever. You need discipline to take the action at some level. What if that lent itself to deeper freedom or more expanded sense of freedom?
Mm. And so this is amazing because I was having this conversation with Richard Rudd, who wrote Gene Keys.
Yes.
And this conversation was what we were talking about, was the idea that true freedom comes from being 100% committed. And Richard, he said on stage, we were on a panel at Medicine Festival outside of London, and on the stage, he drops the mic basically on this moment where he says, if you are 99% committed, it's the same as being 0% committed. Being 100% committed is what is actually needed, because that 1% creates the fracture that destroys the entire thing. Essentially, there's a huge difference between 99 and 100.
I'll give you a tangible example. Intimate relationship. If you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, it doesn't matter what the percentage is, but you're not 100% in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your mind will wander in infinite ways. You will hide in infinite ways. That lack of being committed is probably tethered to some wound or some affliction or some pattern that's maladaptive and doesn't serve you. Unhealed, unresolved, unprocessed, physiological, psychological, relational, emotional trauma, whatever it may be. But in not being committed, you will wander internally. And that is like just being in hell. Mm-hmm. Because now you're here, you're there, you're everywhere, you're scattered.
So what is it? Because now you're speaking my language as a single man who has had relationships where I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure. So what I'm 100% committed to is finding out. But I saw in hindsight what the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, not sure energy did. It dysregulated her nervous system. It was a felt thing. And for me, my rationalization is there are certain elements of the relationship that I'm looking to see that allow me to go, okay, this is the thing that I give 100% to, because I know what my 100% means, but I'm waiting for that thing. But it's kind of a chicken or the egg sometimes.
What's the thing?
It's a...
it's like a feeling?
Yeah, well, it's not just the feeling. There's practicalities of, for example, can we communicate through conflict in a healthy way? Does my partner have the ability to be in a conflict with me in a way that resolves that?
So you're waiting for, as an example, you would be waiting for definition or proof of that before you were to 100% commit?
Depending on what we're describing as 100% commitment, because 100% commitment to me
the
means like
relationship.
I'm 100% committed to, like, I want to marry you, have kids with you. That's a certain level of commitment versus, sure, hey, we're in a monogamous, committed relationship, which means that I will not date anyone. I will not, whatever, sure, I'm here, but I don't know that I want to marry you and have, like, where is commitment versus feeling things out? Because we're using romantic partnership as an example, yeah, but this applies to a business, a hobby. Sure, it's like, sure, where is that line of determining when you give 100% to something?
I think the two things I'd probably say to that is, firstly, it's very subjective where that line is. I don't think there's no objective measurement that applies to every single human. There are too many historical, individual, and cultural differences that would feed into that answer. But I guess the question I would have for you more personally is that a pattern for you in your life and in your relationships? And what does the pattern look like? How does it play out? And what is your sense of what it's tethered to? Because going to the source of that, not necessarily reliving any trauma or pain that's associated, but just going to the source of that is probably going to give you some insight in your relationship to that word commitment, but also in the various stages it plays out. Because it's not just a I guess, homogenous commitment and that's it. There's stages and levels of commitment, obviously. Right. But how it plays out for you is different to others. But if this is a pattern for you where, women are giving you very similar feedback, then, you're the common denominator in your life. So it may be worth exploring what that's tethered to.
Yeah. So,
and you may already know. You may know.
Oh yeah. I have a lot of ideas around some of these things. And what I loved was you said there's different levels of commitment.
Oh, for sure.
And so it's actually about being 100% committed to the level of
100%,
that commitment, which is a nuance, because we're in such a society of such black and white absolutes, red, blue, like political parties, all of these things. And so to hear 100% committed to my ex-partner, that means something. And it means something different when I can say I am 100% committed to the level that we're at. Yeah. But if 100% commitment looks like I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you, I'm marrying you, we're having babies, then clearly I wasn't 100% committed because I ended the relationship, right? So,
because that's what you want. You want babies, you want a family in that way, you want marriage, because that's what. So you're connecting it to that, and then there was something in that relationship that didn't lead you to be able to lean into that. The question I'm asking you in terms of the pattern for you is, does that specific pattern happen often? And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with you or that, it's a pattern around you. It could also mean you haven't quite found that person just yet.
Right. And that's the thing that will eat away at me, Edgar Allan Poe style, which is just, is it something in me that needs to shift about how I'm perceiving, or is it I just haven't met the person yet?
And it could be both, and it could be a myriad of other things, right? But here's something that I sort of caught earlier. What if you know what a leap of faith is, right?
Yeah.
So what if within yourself, not necessarily outwardly towards that person,
right,
but within yourself, you said, I'm going to marry this person, I'm going to have children with this person. And you tried that on internally. So it's an internal energetic, right? You're not saying anything to that person. So obviously, for you to say that, at the very least, there has to be a base trust and love and excitement and yearning desire to actually, at least explore what that may look like, or a relationship.
Right.
But just this deeper leap of faith, almost trusting before you quote unquote know.
So I didn't know that the conversation was going to come in this direction.
But
on the creative path. Have to go but I'm just sharing with you personally. I actually, so I had a relationship in which I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because there were red flags. There were things that I was seeing that I was pointing out and trying to work through, and because they weren't received and resolved, and it was such a fight, I had. I'm not sure. And
so what's wrong with that?
What?
What's wrong with that?
Because I recognized that the I'm not sure energy was triggering her very wounding on a deep nervous system level. And so I beat myself up for a while around, if I had actually been able to come in with more certainty, would that have resolved the thing that was causing the lack of trust? And that's what I meant, chicken or the egg. So anyway, we'll never know, but that was a big thing. And so anyway, after that, I fell deeply in love with someone that was long distance, and we hadn't met in person. But I had certainty in a way that I don't think I've ever had, because I could tell you the plant medicine stories. I could tell you the dreams that other people had about it. Like, it was just this thing where I went, it's clearly this. And took the leap of faith that you're describing, and saved the story not for this podcast. But once we actually met in person, it imploded didn't
work for you.
It didn't work
you,
for reasons that we can talk off.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting about that, because that shook my faith, right? That shook I was certain in a way that I'd never been before. How could that? Well, what I am taking away from it is that it answered the question from the previous relationship. I was able to, without having the evidence.
I don't think it did.
You don't think it did? Oh, I love this.
Two different nervous systems, two different women, two different people, two totally different historical contexts that are so layered.
Well, for me, it felt like I saw that I could take that leap of faith.
Oh yeah.
That's what I meant.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's like, because in that previous relationship, I didn't get to the point that you're talking about. Just go all in as a leap of faith.
Yeah.
In that way. And
I'm
with
referring
this
to something
one,
else, sorry.
With this one, I feel I did do that, and it answered a question for me.
Okay, let me clarify. What question did it answer?
Was I capable of it, or did I have a fear of going all in?
Oh, were you capable of actually going all in?
Was I capable of going all in? Because that was the thing I had been beating myself up about. Is I wasn't all in, and that dysregulated her nervous system, chicken or the egg. And then in this one, I went all in with far less evidence. Right? We hadn't even met in person. And for months we were in this thing. And I go, wow, it's powerful for me to see how all in I was. I mean, it wrecked me when that didn't work out.
Yeah. Were you all in a healthy way?
I mean, I don't know. It depends.
I guess only you could answer that. But just to clarify, what I thought you meant was when you said it answered something for you. I thought what I thought you meant was that it answered that, I can go all in and it still won't affect the nervous system. And that's what I meant. Yeah, totally different women, right? So don't discount all in, but clearly you're not discounting all in, because you're saying I felt the capacity that I was really genuinely all in.
Yeah. And so it answered that question. And so at least I'm taking that. I still haven't fully understood. It'll be in hindsight sort of thing. For sure. All right, I'm going to take this in a different direction, but I hope everyone enjoyed that deep dive into my life. One of the pieces about you that I've really appreciated is your poetry that you post online. You post erotic poetry. Would you consider it erotic poetry?
Yeah, I guess it is really. It's erotic like musings, erotic poetry, sensual, sensual
poetry.
It's a bit of it's a bit of a guise though, meaning that it's really not about. Anyway, we'll keep going.
Yeah, I mean it's a poetic thirst trap, and
well said.
And so I've appreciated seeing that side of you, because on the outside you're like a really masculine guy, very tough, muscles tattooed, fights, runs, discipline, all of these things, goes to North Carolina, combat, shoot guns, all of it. And then here is this other side that is deeply attuned to the nuances of the feminine and the eroticism of the feminine. And I'm curious for you how when I met you, I don't think you were doing that. Like that.
I was.
You what?
Oh,
you
I've
were
been doing it for years.
Okay. But you were sharing it online too?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did that come about in your life? And when did you start sharing it?
It came about after some, quite a few years of very deliberate deep dive into self and healing and wholeness work, and just you really going to some dark places and coming out of that a different person. So probably started about 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
And I've been in
that was like right when we met.
No, where did we meet again?
Encinitas.
Okay, so
Right?
that was about 6 years. That's right. That was about 6
Yeah.
years ago.
We went through, because I know
Yes.
that Christine
Of
called
course,
you
of
in with
course,
that
that's right.
whole thing.
That was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had just started. So coming on the other side of that deep somatic work was when this sort of unlocked for you?
No. Before. A couple of
Really?
years before
Okay.
that. Yeah. But that deep somatic work was very helpful. Yeah. Very. I mean, that was very, very helpful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what is your process with that?
Funnily enough, I've actually purposely just paused the last few months. I've just I've written so much. I mean, again, like, what does that even mean? It's not like I've been doing it for 50 years. It's been 8 years, but pretty religiously every week. Like, I'd write a piece per week.
Okay, a piece per week. So did you have a set day set aside? Did you have? Yeah, I'm gonna laugh. Tell me, what is it?
Laugh. So sometimes I would. Other times, because I was Sunday posts, they're usually on a Sunday.
Okay.
I'm just going to be honest. So I would just wake up and I'd sit in the toilet and I would close my eyes for a moment. And then I'd just reach over to my phone and I'd type away.
Wow.
Sometimes.
The porcelain throne was the place where all this erotic poetry.
It would, I know, like, it would flood or it wouldn't. So when I say flood, it means I'll just be like this and I wouldn't be thinking. It's just literally, I'm not thinking. I'm just, words are coming, phrases are coming, passages are coming, themes are coming. I'm feeling it. It's a strange thing, but yeah. I don't have to be in the toilet. I'm very quick on the toilet, in and out. But I would just sit there. Anyway, that's
because it was your just space. It was your space, quiet, still.
Yeah.
Got it. And then your wife would just be, "What is he doing in there?" It's like 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, no, it would be like a few minutes.
You would write these in just a few minutes?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Very, very. And there are other times where I'd sit and sometimes I'd be on the plane and I'd have an inspiration and I would get my phone, or if I'm working on my laptop, and I would just go and maybe I'd write 2 or 3 if it just came to me. So it's just, honestly, I was open to allowing it to be anywhere, anytime, any place.
And so did you notice that there were times, places, times of your life, chapters, seasons, that it was flowing more and then times it was flowing less?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like at the moment it's flowing less.
Can you describe the difference and why?
Yeah, the main reason why is because now I'm writing my book that this is all connected to. So all of these musings are actually the inspiration for the book that I'm writing now, and there'll be a musing per chapter. And I've got hundreds of musings, man. I'm going to have to pick which one I want, but so I thought I need to pause the musings for a moment, and I just want to channel that energy into the substance of the book. But without, those were the catalysts for this particular book.
So that's really interesting because it describes something that is very alive for me in my life, which is we have a certain amount of creative energy. There at any given time. We can increase our capacity. We can go through all of that stuff. Yes. And there's a certain amount of creative energy. Let's say you get 100 points every day and you decide where those go. And it sounds like you're now saying, hey, musings, like, don't come to me anymore because my free space, my toilet space is going to this book. Now, I have found that to be true for myself with entrepreneurship. So when I'm in business building mindset, it can often be very hard to write poetry because also there's my most creative time generally where I write poems is the morning. And so if I'm waking up in the morning thinking about my org chart and how I want to reassign some roles and responsibilities, that's what I'm thinking about. That's what I'm journaling about. Poetry's not coming through. And so it's been a real interesting journey to try and balance art with entrepreneurship. And I would love for you to speak to how you relate to your creativity. It's been a big part of your life for so long, but you also are an incredible businessman and coach. And so how do you blend these worlds?
Yeah, there's probably for my personal life, there's probably 2 responses to that. And I'm just going to come back to discipline because we pulled that thread a few times, where I create purposeful spaces in my life, in my week, to allow for business to transpire or to work with my clients or to ideate on entrepreneurship or business, or to allow creative space for me to just, because I like writing posts as well and doing videos, shooting videos. That's part of my creative. And what's the crux of that is the connecting dots and really simplifying complex notions of the human condition and doing the best that I can in that and speaking that language so people can relate. And in that relatability, they feel a sense of reprieve, maybe, or a sense of I'm not alone, or a sense of insight, something comes through. And so that's my creativity around that. And so I create space for that. Sometimes I also honor my creativity, meaning if it's coming through really strong, I will pretty much drop what I'm doing if I can, and I'll go there. If it comes on I'm about to go to bed and I'm getting a bout of creativity and it's really coming in and it's 10 p.m. at night, I'm more than likely going to go upstairs. I'm going to film for like 30 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever it is. I'm just going to get it done. And not even about getting it done. I'm just going to be in that thing that is creative for me. Otherwise, I don't think I'm honoring myself and honoring what that looks like. So, I'll create deliberate spaces with what my priorities are in my week, so to speak. But I also am just open to allowing space for creativity to flow through me and move through me and honoring that.
And so what does your week look like when you're designing the spaces? What does that practically look like?
You mean like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday sort of thing? Or
yeah, like what do you have? Do your days look do you have Tuesdays are with clients, Wednesdays are for content? Is it like that? Do you have the first half of the day blocked out? Take me through your calendar.
Yeah. So really a lot of my life now revolves around my baby girl. Like it revolves around what her needs are and also my wife's needs too in terms of just her day per se. But I try to do see clients Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but sometimes Thursday, Friday. And I try and leave Thursdays and Fridays a little more open and spacious for creativity, for content creation, for writing my book, for just being, for playing, for connecting with friends. And the weekends is friends, family, and creativity actually as well. But I won't necessarily see clients on weekends, but again, writing a program or. For example, we spoke about the Art of Living Center, right? So we will design a program for that specific to the art of living, and that's going to be a creative process for me. So on the weekends, I'll put my little baby girl down, and I might think, it's 7:30 at night. I'm like, I want to do some programming, so I'm just going to go do it. Mm-hmm. So I reserve. I'm constantly quote unquote working, but I don't see it as working. For me, it's all creativity, man.
Got it. And how big is your team?
Technically my team is 3 people. I have an OBM and 2 assistants. I mean, that's really and at the moment.
They make the content.
I make the content.
You make the content.
Well, I create the content. They take care of all the technical aspects of the content. Yes.
Got it.
Oh, and I've got an ads guy as well. So there are maybe 4 people in my team, so to speak, but they're all, the only full-time person is my main assistant. Yeah. She's been with me for 5 years. She's amazing.
Amazing. And so do you feel you have to spend much time in CEO mode? Like, do you consider yourself CEO of your business in that way?
Yeah, sure. No, it's just more regular daily communication with my team. When I need something, I ask for it. If I have a question, I ask it. If I want to create something, I ask their opinion on it. Or if I'm very clear on it, I direct them to do it. And then they all know if they have an opinion on something that's different to what I think, always share it, because that's what I pay them for. That's their expertise. Mm-hmm. And they're also implementers as well. So, I just think I'm in a good flow with it. I'm open to conversation. I'm open to their feedback, and I just ask for what I need.
Mm-hmm. And so you're in a book writing season right now.
I am, man. The first draft is due. First final draft is due like mid-December.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm about to go into 2 months, all of November, literally November 1st until January 1st. So all of November, all of December in Spain to write my book and finish it. I've set myself, I am in the portal during that time. And for me, I have told my team basically, if we haven't gotten it to a point where it's all systematized, where I really I'm needed like 1 meeting a week, basically, just the start of the week. Cool. Awesome. If it's not at that point, then I'm just going to shut it all down. and I'll just shut down so I can go into this, and we'll revisit in January, because I'm 100% committed to the book is the priority. And what that looks like for me is I want to wake up and not have to turn on my phone at all, right? Just be completely in the creative. I want to be able to follow intuitively. I feel like I need to go on a drive today. You know what I mean? Just allow the muse to guide me for 2 months. And that requires a lot of spaciousness, and it requires a lot of trust for me as an artist in that way. Discipline. And discipline. And so I'm creating the systems now that provide me the freedom, right? That's what October is. Yeah. So I have that freedom. When I hear you talk about your book writing, what's interesting is it doesn't seem like there's like finite, 3 hours every morning for book writing. So you have a different approach to it than James McRae, who was on this podcast, who every morning, 2 to 3 hours religiously, not to be bothered, goes in and writes. And what is it about your relationship to your schedule being so fluid?
Trust.
Okay.
I just trust that I'm going to get it done the way it needs to get done. And I trust my ability to not only deliver, but really touch into the messaging, the core of the messaging, and the inspiration that and sometimes it comes through me, man, and I'm writing up until 12 o'clock at night, and I prefer not to do that. I prefer to get to sleep earlier, because I don't know what type of night I'm going to have with my baby, so I may not sleep. But if it's there, it's just there, and I just say fuck it and I go for it,
Mm-hmm.
And then look, my preference is to wake up in the morning and write. I can do that. I'd probably just have to get up earlier, like 4 a.m. or something, to do that, to write for a couple of hours.
Mm-hmm.
Am I willing to do that? Maybe I'm not as disciplined as but it's not like I'm like, damn, I need to be doing that. I'm not doing it, because if I needed to do it, I would go and do it. I'd make it happen. But ideally, I wake up in the morning, whenever I wake up, and I go and write. That feels good to me. I don't have that luxury, or I don't have that choice, because morning time with my baby is actually just more important.
So you spoke to something in there that's a gnosis of who you are that I want to highlight, which is, you said, if I had to, I know I would. And that's when I was talking about this masculine, there's whatever has to happen to get the job done, that yang energy that is often associated with the masculine, but we know feminine will definitely do that shit too. It's a warrior mentality, and we see this now from the cold plunges to the comet to whatever, of I have pushed myself so far and so hard, from the somatic therapies that we've talked about that are, that's pushing yourself in ways
Yes.
Somatic sexual healing therapy is what we both went to the same practitioners that just, that's a level of pushing yourself that, even Navy SEALs aren't necessarily going to do, right?
Yeah.
And then there's athletics, mixed martial arts, there's the plant medicine ceremonies, there's the cold plunges, there's you name it. There's this evidence that I have that I am able and willing to push myself as far as I need to accomplish the thing that I know is important.
Yeah, I would also say 2 months writing. I know you're going to be in a beautiful place and all that. It's not like you're locked up in a box in the desert, in the Sahara Desert. But still, that's a lot of discipline, man, to go away from your everyday life.
I've never been there. I don't know anyone there.
That's another thing as well. It's a big thing, man.
Mm-hmm. And so, thank you, first of all. Second, I think that element is how we unlock another level of trust.
Yeah.
And it's kind of parallel to what we're talking about, like discipline leads to freedom or commitment leads to freedom. It's when I know that I am willing and able to do what's needed, I can actually relax a little bit and just trust. I'll know what's needed, and then I'll do it. And right now it's not needed for you to wake up at 4 a.m. And if it doesn't come through as quickly, and now December's rolling around and you got that deadline, you'll be up at 3 a.m. if you have to. How did you develop that? Did you always have that? Was that just a part of your nature? And how do people develop more of that?
So to speak personally, if I track back my life, ultimately, if I was to just simply explain it, it was really born, that aspect of myself was born from wounding. It was a compensatory strategy, right? So I'm grateful for that very much. And to be more specific, it was a lack of belief in myself. It was low self-worth and low self-esteem. And so the way that I proved that I was worthy or valuable was through my performance and my accolades. And that required discipline and focus, laser focus, particularly in, I grew up, I was quite overweight. I wasn't obese by any means, but I was overweight. And as I started losing weight when I was probably about 15 years of age, and started going to the gym a little more and started just becoming a man slowly.
Mm-hmm. I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Well, it's becoming. I'm not quite there yet either. But yes, you know what I mean. So and just noticing how when I put this hard effort in, it yielded something, and that became addictive as well, right? And I also then ran a story of, well, I don't have any natural talent, so I have to work really hard, and et cetera, et cetera. And so cool that happened, and then so it was born from that, and that became a habit and a pattern, right? I guess just ability to grind and work hard. And then, interestingly, as I really did deeper work around that wound of false bravado, compensating for a fragile ego and all of that, the habit of grinding and working hard, it just became something I could access still if I wanted it. But the source, the wellspring of inspiration, or rather the fuel was different this time around.
What fuels you now?
Oh, inspiration, joy. I just the thought of, again, depending on what the thing is, right? But if I was to, my daughter, let me just say that for starters, wanting to be the best version of myself for her, knowing, because I see it in real time, how much she observes and absorbs, from the subtlety to the more overtness, if that's a word, or overt nature of my behavior. It keeps me in check in terms of, where am I acting from? When I'm saying something, where's it coming from within myself? I'm just more attentive to that now, even more so, because she's such an impressionable young being. And I know what being small looks like. So I don't remember all of it per se, but I was very impressionable, and the very volatile, harsh environment that I lived in shaped a lot of me, all of me, of course, but it shaped a lot of my maladaptive strategies and patterns, a lot of the harshness in me. And I don't want her to go through that. And that's, look, she's going to go through what she goes through. She's going to interpret life how she interprets life. I'm a guardian and custodian for her, and I love her, and I'm responsible for my actions. So that's a big part of what inspires me. But then also, man, just the excitement of being in a creative process. The excitement of shooting a 60-second video that makes sense to me, right? Yeah, but seriously, the excitement of stringing 10 or 12 words together that form a quote card that then tell a story about an aspect of being human that someone may or may not read that could be relatable to them, and they go, oh, I get it now. That makes sense to me, and it helps someone. But beyond that, I can't control any of that. I just do it for me. I just do it because I really enjoy making things make sense for me. And so I guess the direct answer to your question as well, is just the intrinsic nature of the action itself is more of what fuels me. Now, am I going to sit here and say I have no self-worth or self-esteem issues? Am I still not trying to prove myself to someone? Like, man, there'll be times where something awesome happens in my life, and then the immediate thought is, if only I could show Baba this, Baba's dad. And, so there's still a part of me that wants, dad's approval or wants something. And that's okay. Like, my relationship to that is very different to what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, and that's full circle to what you're talking about. It's not even a healing doesn't mean it's gone. It's just your ability to be with it in a way.
Ways,
like, I broke my ankle when I was this, and so now I walk a little bit thick, but I've integrated it. I'm good. Yeah. That's healed. So I end these podcasts with what I have felt is a 5-step way that people can walk a creative path to a creative life that they can monetize and actually build a life around, because that's a huge piece that I think is incredibly important, is not just tapping into creativity, but how can you actually start to create a reciprocity where the creativity you're putting out into the world brings back, whether it's financial abundance or whatever it is that you actually desire. And so inside of my artistic entrepreneur program, we have these 5 modules, and that leads me to 5 questions that I have for you. The first step is identifying your core conflict, because that core conflict becomes the lens we wear on every area of life, but especially in business as we're trying to achieve that next thing or create that thing that we will consistently face that resistance that is meant for us to grow through. And I want to know, what has been your core conflict as you've been building all the amazing things you have?
It's my core inner conflict, right? More like a
Yeah.
My core inner conflict, I would say, is just consistently breaking through new barriers of expression or success, externalized success, whatever I make that mean at the time, and just the sense of deservedness and worthiness, because I really am a generational pattern breaker in my lineage on all sides, and giving myself permission and allowance to actually to do that and to continue that path, right? Without maybe feeling guilt or shame or anything like that.
The tall poppy.
Yeah, that's why I'm interested. You know that as an Australian saying.
I know. Yeah. Come on. I'm well traveled.
You are. You're very well cultured. That's true.
Okay, so identifying that core conflict is where it's important to start, and then once we have an idea of that, we can bring that to these other areas. And the first one is developing a 100% certainty offer. So this is the thing that you know with 100% certainty that the right person, you bringing that medicine, their life will change. And so again, that's different than 80% certainty. When you walk through the world with that knowing that you have 100% certainty on that thing that you offer, what is that for you?
What is the thing?
Yeah. What is that 100% certainty thing that you bring?
My presence. Just so I work in the space of, or I express in the space of healing and wholeness and supporting people moving through challenge and difficulty and pain. Yes, I help people optimize themselves. I will have clients that come to me and just say, hey, I'm feeling really good about life and I want to optimize this area. And so we go into that, and the focus is more on optimization. Of course, if any stuff comes up, we'll deal with it, right? But it still requires presence. And so my presence to intensity and immense pain and challenge and conflict and trauma, and my ability to support people in helping them self-soothe, I guess it's a superpower. I guess it's what you're sort of asking. Like,
yeah,
it's what is your superpower in your that's the crux, because that feeds into every product I create, whether it's a virtual product, an intimate container in one evening in person, a 7-day retreat, one-on-one coaching. Without that presence, really being present to them and their needs and being able to help them co-regulate in their nerve. I should unpack what presence is. So my ability to regulate my own nervous system so that they can co-regulate with me, that's probably the biggest thing that I bring, again, to whatever the product looks like. Yeah.
And so once you have that certainty and you know that you can bring it to these different things, I've found that the next step that's really important is to craft signature content. And so not the everyday content, but a few of those key pieces, things, they don't even have to be on social media, but a few things that exist in the world that do the work of someone experiences it and they go, oh, the essence of your frequency is transmitted in that. How do you go about creating those signature things in your world?
Yeah, so through private coaching and then facilitation, and if I was to be a bit more specific, I would say inner child work, somatic work, and polarity work. So in polarity work, we're talking about masculine and feminine dynamics, intimate relating, learning to relate to self, so enhancing relationship to self, our inner child, others, particularly intimate relationships, romantic partnerships, and our relationship to the divine or God. And so those 4 areas, but through the lens of facilitation. And that, again, that comes in like in experiential polarity work, experiential somatic work. Breath work is an example of that, and a core pillar for me. And then specifically experiential inner child work as well.
Okay. And so you have these signature things that are now woven into all of your content. The next step is building authentic relationships, what I call dating your audience. How do you actually approach building authentic relationship to your social media following?
Consistency. That's number one. I just consistently show up on social media. I have been for years, man. I was creating content when I was really shit at creating content, and no one was watching, and no one was commenting, and no one was liking or looking, and I just committed to doing it.
What year was that you started?
Well, if I really go back, when I started writing a blog a day on was it Blogspot? It was Blogspot back then. It was Sweating Blood was the name of the blog.
Wow.
Back in my late teens, like 19, 20, and then really picked it up again when I was 22. And I was writing a blog a day, minimum 500 words, more like 1,000 words minimum, really.
Wow.
Yeah, blog a day for years. And then it just slowly transitioned into Facebook posts, right? Probably in my late 20s or something like that.
How old are you?
42.
42. I'm 39, so
Yeah.
same generation.
Yeah. And so I've been at it for a while.
Yeah.
I wish I had the smarts back then to actually monetize what I was doing and market it in an appropriate way.
Build an email list from believe me. When my poem went viral, that amount of energy, I wish I had known what I'm talking about right now. Part of why I know these steps now is because I made the mistake of not doing them, right? Looking back going, damn it. And so I love what you shared there and how long you've been putting content out. And for me, by the way, that looked like making my own short films as an actor, right? Awesome. And so, but even my first video of just talking to a camera about something I was learning about manifestation or what I was going through was 2013. So that's awesome. Almost 12 years now. Yeah. And I always want to highlight that for people who don't realize that a lot of the people they look up to, like yourself, have been in it for a very, very long time. And so the final step of this process is building your monetization ecosystem. Now it's time to monetize and build something that's scalable, if that's the goal, or at least scale revenue. How have you approached the actual business side of what you do?
Yeah, and I'm in a couple of transitions at the moment as well with that, but I'll speak to it thus far. So part of it for me is, yes, it's creating revenue, of course, and monetizing my services and my products, but it's also accessibility is really important to me just as a value. We were talking about this before, right? And so what I mean by that is, okay, let me create a funnel of product value. For example, social media content, free. I really front load that in terms of, I don't just put, at least from my perspective, my intention at the very least is to put really high quality content there that is full circle. It doesn't just leave people like, now what do I do? I try and provide possible solutions and insights. And so I really try and add a lot of value. Then I have a number of different products, whether it's a breathe and meditate product or a 5-part breathwork series, or even a ton of free products. Like I have a 5-part breathwork series that is for free. I have a quiz that you can do, an assessment. What are your 5 biggest love blocks? I have a masculine, feminine polarity quiz as well, all free, by the way. And then when you sign up for that and you do it, you also then put into an email list that, yes, nurtures you and encourages you to do an inner child course, which is, I'll get to that in a moment. But there's a ton of value that's added to that. And I'm really upfront with that. So you'll get 3 or 5 emails, but in those emails, you're provided with practices to go and do, and then come back, comment to me. How did that practice go? So again, all free. And then, some breathwork and meditation stuff. So any products from sort of that, including breathwork for the feminine, $17 up until about like that $50 mark. And then there's a group of products that are like $100 to the $200 mark. And then there's a group of products that are that sort of $600 mark. Then there's a $1,200 product in a child course.
You got a whole ladder.
Yeah, for sure. But it's also, you're learning along the way, and you're deepening the learning along the way as well, right? And then there's the in-person stuff and the retreats that can range anywhere from, say, 2,500 to 15,000, depends. And then my one-on-one coaching that starts at 44,000 and goes up from there, you know. And so there's all along the way, there's all these different ways you can work with me, and the higher you go, the deeper it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that for someone who's listening to this that might be earlier stage, do you advise thinking about the ladder? Like, do you think about it in that way? Did you design it in that way, or did you just go, I want to do this thing, and then now I want to do this thing, and I can just figure out how to put it together? How strategic have you been in that process?
Yeah, I think anyone starting out, especially in this space, you want to have at least probably 3 entry points, right? When I first started, I niched a lot more as well. And I really, when I first started, I actually just focused on one-on-one. Just one-on-one and nothing else. Yeah. And then I really, because that's how I developed deeper aptitude and skills. And then what I was learning from all those one-on-one sessions and that private coaching is I would then be able to convert that into a small mini course or something. And then, you know, I would offer that as well as a way to get into my ecosystem. But I think if you're starting out, you know, 3 offers is good, meaning there's a free offer, so probably social media content, or some free, you know, checklists or something that's of value. Make it really of value. Again, I'm a big believer in front loading. My friend George Bryant, who's in marketing, is give. Just fucking give. It's really important. And it also sharpens you as well, right? It sharpens your skill. So you have that number of free offerings, whether it's social media content or some other things. And then you'll offer like a course, like an evergreen course, or even like a live course. There's an argument for both, because if people can't do live, then they can downgrade to downsell or something to the evergreen. And then you have, you know, generally speaking, like some one-on-one coaching, whatever that looks like for you. And it goes up in price, right? And that's the way people can work with you. So you're not totally excluding. But there's also a position for saying, hey, all I do is one-on-one coaching. That's it. All I do is one. And honestly, man, like, I'm moving a little more and more towards that. Like, I have all these established programs, and I've been coaching people literally since I was 18 years old, and I would meet people where I was at, of course. I'm not coaching at the level I'm coaching now. I mean, man, the first clients, I was charging $15 an hour.
Right.
I'm very far from that now. And that takes time though, right? Yeah.
And I appreciate that you share that, because I think a lot of us are actually moving in that direction. I literally had a conversation, because I think, you know, I was paid $1 million to coach someone for a year, and I have recently I wonder why I didn't just try and scale that, like replicate that, and just, whether it's even just 500,000, something like one client a year, say you are my client this year, and that is enough to take care of the needs, and then everything else is pure inspiration, and let go of the team and the thing and all of what could that look like. And I've heard a lot of our community and many other people going in this route of simplifying in a lot of ways. Right now.
And I'm just really proficient at that, man. I have a lot of range when it comes to working with diverse group of people. Again, I've earned that over 24 years. Yeah. You know what I mean? When I first started, it was different. I was niching a lot more. And so I'm really just contemplating going a lot deeper into one-on-one coaching. And not that I'm not deep in it now, I very much am, but just that. Yeah. Just that. And you know, obviously any other creative endeavor, such as writing a book and creating content, I'll still do that because I just love doing it. But in terms of monetization, just that. And anything my wife wants to do, because I love teaching with her, that's basically it.
Well, bro, I really appreciate that we got a chance to drop in on this podcast. Can you let people know how they can find you and this really impressive ascension ladder that you have created and possibly only get the one-on-one coaching when it's all gone besides that?
I appreciate you, man. At Stefanos Sifandos on social media, and stefanossifandos.com, and you know, all upcoming events, programs, and so forth can be found on my website. And even on my social media, like I'll promote anything that I'm doing there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we will put all that in the show notes. Brother, is there anything that you want to say that we haven't touched on?
Oh, lots, man. I love speaking with you. I would just say, you know, obviously people here that are listening, I don't want to be assumptuous, but they're probably more than likely really wanting to tap into that creative prowess that they know lives within them, and then hopefully be able to monetize that so they can do what they love and be what they love in the world and not have to worry about surviving per se. I would just say be smart in how you do that, and also don't give up. Be relentless and persistent, not to a fault, of course, where you're hurting yourself and end up in hospital because you're too fatigued or anything, but just trust, lean into that trust. Just keep there's so many different schools of thought on this, but you can absolutely monetize your creativity. Absolutely, clearly you believe that. And I'm a big believer of that, man. Big believer. Not fuck just doing something that you don't want to do just to pay the bills. And you may have to for a while, but if you have something within you that's burning, you can build it on the side and be smart. And then once you hit a certain point, forget about everything else that's redundant and just be in that.
That's really great advice. And last thing I'll add is remember the discipline. Remember the discipline, fam. Thank you so much for joining us and walking this creative path with us today. If you've resonated with this, if you've gotten value, please help us spread the word by sharing it out. And when you do, make sure you tag Stefanos here and myself so we can see and reshare the magic that's going around the planet, because more people walking a creative path is a good thing for the planet. So thank you for walking that with us. I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you are interested in building a life that you love through the 3 pillars of relationship, business, and creativity, then I encourage you to continue checking out more of my content, including this video, which I really think that you will like.